Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. And today we're going to cover taking all the old glass and plastic out of your canopy and installing new plain plastic, as well as some new Airtex wool fabric and new polyfoam. We're going to show you what you need to do to remove everything. There is a nice tool for removing the rivets, and then we'll show you there's a lot of trial and fit of how all the pieces go together, but we're going to cover all of that until you finally get to the stage where it's all painted and go back together. We shot some video of a day of a lot of the trial and fit, so stay tuned while we go through the process of getting a place to work and starting the process. Stay tuned. So we would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content. Now we're going to start the process by getting a good place to work. In our case, we chose a table and we put a couple of packing blankets on it to cushion the canopy so we don't scratch any of the paint. Then we took a lot of pictures of what the canopy looked like. These are going to be our references, so making sure we put it back together in the correct manner. We want to make sure that all the plastic overlaps the same, that all the fasteners will be the same, location of the holes will all match up. We're going to be replacing the visors with different visors, but still we're going to take good measurements of everything and good pictures of everything that we have so we know what we start with. Then we're going to begin the process of removing all the old screws. Now some of these are going to be rivets. Now there is a tool that you can buy from Aircraft Spruce. It's a rivet removal tool. It goes over the dome head of the rivet and allows you to drill right through the center of the rivet and pull it all apart. Now along with that rivet tool, you'll also be using a screwdriver, a pick or an awl, and some sandpaper, and then a container for all the old hardware. Now, when you start the removal, once you've gotten everything measured and you know where you are, where the canopy bumpers were and such like that, then you're ready to start taking the canopy latch cover off. Now you want to be careful when you do that. It's going to be very brittle, but it also fits together where like three pieces fit together. So you're going to want to be very careful with that. Then once you have the canopy latch cover removed, then you can start looking at the sides of everything and how all the fabric that you currently have fits in there. And so you want to make sure that you have that way when you cut pieces, they'll be big enough to cover. You're also going to mark any places where there's been excessive wear on the canopy and try to figure out what that was coming from. While you're doing all of that, you're going to leave all the clips in place for now, but you're going to take good measurements on them. As you can see, this is 40-year-old original plastic. This airplane was never hangared, never spent any time out in the weather, and this is the shape it's in. So once you start taking measurements of all the current locations, this is going to be for the canopy fabric, and that's on the top, the left and the right. You want to notice any gaps left on the side. You want to kind of mimic them so everything will go back together correctly. You want to get the location of the center into the tabs, where the canopy stops are, where the clips are, and this can be greatly facilitated if you take the time to take out a piece of paper and draw a rough diagram of the canopy and mark locations of everything. That will get you started on it. I mean, this will fill a day one easily, just getting into this step. So ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for a bit more fun. So basically, this is not a difficult job. We're going to cover all the materials that you're going to need to use in it and the markers and stuff like that. But again, a good diagram will tell you where all the different screws go. I mean, you have 5 screws on each side. You have the number that hold the canopy all together. You've got the 2 canopy ride bumpers that have to go through all the plastic. So it does take a time for all of this to go together. Now, like the old sun visors, we're taking them out. If somebody needs some parts for the ones that have a current one, we're going with new blue sky sun visors. We're also going again with all new canopy plastic from Plain Plastics. Now the canopy plastic that we all did a trial fit on, it fits really good. A minimum amount of trimming compared to like the Fletcher plastic as you saw in the original video 5.5 years ago, where you have to trim out the whole center section. But it does take time to get all the pieces fit together, because there's a lot of places where like 3 pieces of plastic all meet and they have to fit and all be trimmed and get all ready to go. So as we're going through all of that, we're going to be marking the locations of everything, creating our patterns for the fabric, any trim places for down the road, at the same time giving any feedback to Plain Plastics for like the canopy pieces. When we were doing the canopy windows in the back, the plastic doesn't exactly fit quite right, so we took the time at Oshkosh to mention it to them and to contact their service department about where the problem is so they can try to address that, so future canopy work will be a lot easier. And then, you know, there's nothing special about the tools. You can do this with a drill. Now the rivet tool for removing the rivets comes in very handy and prevents marring the surface. Now there is old plastic there, but again, it's very brittle and you don't want to get to the metal underneath. Then you're going to spend a great deal of time cleaning everything. Once you release the hardware at the bottom and the windows can come out, you're going to want to get all the old adhesives and old sealant and markings out of the canopy, and then you can start the removal process for the fabric and the old polyfoam. Now I will warn you, you might want to wear a mask for this, because that polyfoam may break apart and become, you know, dust that will be inhalable. But you're also going to want a trash bag to put it in, because it is kind of messy and it gets everywhere. Then once you have it all off and you've got everything measured, then you're at a good sound location to begin the final removal process, and that's going to mean pulling out the last remnants of the fabric, getting down to where you can almost see the serial numbers on the top of the canopy. You're going to mark all the locations of the clips. Now, there's nothing critical about where the clips go, but you want to get the spacing about right along the length, because when you're all done, you want a nice professional look. You want nice even spacing, and you want all the clips to be of the same size, so that all your hardware is the same, so that when you carry a few spares, if you ever lose one, you can readdress all of that down the road and keep your airplane looking nice. So that's going to pretty well take care of day one. Now, once the old fabric comes out, it can come in very handy for making the new patterns for cutting the wool fabric. Now the wool fabric is just a wool fabric. The tint we covered in another video, but it's just a gray slate color. And it also, the polyfoam is nothing special. It's just 1/2 inch thick polyfoam, which makes a good sound dampener on the canopy to give you a nice quiet ride up in the front seat. So again, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing really complicated about that, and you're going to spend a lot of time, it seems, with great silliness measuring where the clips are and then getting the clips into about the proper position again after everything's been cleaned and you start the reassembly process. But take my word for having done these several times, you're going to want to have that location marked, and it's going to greatly facilitate the ease with which this job goes back together. Again, not a very difficult job. You just have to take your time, dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and I'll let you get on here looking at the final measurements, and I'll pick you back up in just a minute when we begin day 2. So we've covered acquiring the plastic, and there is a lead time when you order your plastic, and we talked a video about getting all the fabrics and everything that we need for this job. But here are some things that we haven't covered yet in the video for you. One, you know, you'll notice right here that there are 6 days worth of work to do this. Now, that's 6 of our normal shop days. Most of our shop days run 10 to 12 hours until we get to a good breaking point. The total time on this whole job, it was about 72 hours start to finish. So you can budget that in. If a shop's charging $100 an hour, that's about $7,200 to do all of this work. Now, if you're doing a restoration on your own aircraft, that kind of gives you a ballpark number of when you might want to bring in another pair of hands and pay a mechanic to come and assist you with some of the finer bits of this. But again, nothing hard or difficult about this. You do need to be an A&P because it will have to be signed off and put in the logbooks. But again, that kind of gives you a feel for the monetary investment you're placing. That's just on the labor for the install. Now, it can be done quicker and it will not look as nice, but again, all for you to judge and figure out. The plastic we covered in price, the fabric we covered in price, and they are kind of minor when all things are considered, considering the labor. And a lot of it's going to be, again, fit and trim. So you're going to be sanding, you're going to get a file, you're going to be marking, you're going to be test fitting, a little more marking, a lot more sanding. So again, you know, a dust mask if you need it. but a good shop vac for keeping the area clean will reduce a lot of that. But again, I did want to mention, I guess if you're taking all these measurements, a tape measure would come in handy. So let me add that to the list. And at the end of each day in this video, I'm going to put a brief recap of the steps that went on throughout that day to get you to the end of that day. Another thing to add to your parts list for tools you might need will be spring clamps. They can be small spring clamps, just 2 or 3 inches, or bigger ones, 4 or 5. A lot of times you don't need a lot of force to hold the new plastic in place, but it has to be held securely so you can mark and measure everything. And let's get back to the marking and measuring, and I'll see you at the end of all this in just another minute or so. Now, we had feedback from a customer. They ordered the plain plastic for a 2-place, and we did a quick video on all the work going into a Yankee, making that Yankee look very spectacular. So now we have videos out there of plastics in both the 2 and the 4-place, and in the 4-place airplanes we have the plastics that are available from Fletch Air under their PMA, and then we have the ones from Plain Plastics and their particular certification. So those are 2 different sources. Shop wisely. Take a look, check with both the suppliers of the current prices. Again, because of the work that we do here at Yankee Aviation, when we measure all this stuff and do our diagrams, we get back to the original manufacturer, in this case Plain Plastics, and let them know they need to add a little bit more here. They can trim a little bit better there. That will make the mold changes. That will make it easier for everyone down the road. And let's wrap up the measurements here on the end of day 1, and then we'll get on to the rest of the work with a good summary. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. So we start off day 2 now that we have most everything removed, but there are some things that we're going to mark on canopy left and canopy right. One of those is going to be the locations of the canopy stops, the little brackets. So we're going to mark where they go on the canopy. That probably won't get removed with sealant because after all it is a Sharpie. But we're going to remove all of that, and then from that, now the window are going to get freed from all the hardware that was holding them in place, and now the windows are ready to come out. Now be very careful with the canopy at this point, because with the plastic and the glass out of it, that adds a lot of the rigidity. It's like a monocoque structure. The windows actually get into that and help with some of the canopy structure, so it will be a lot flimsier and you don't want to damage it. So just again, another cautionary note, be careful when you're pulling and tugging on it and moving it about. We find that setting it on its end is its most stable location for distributing its own weight. Then once you get the windows out, then you want to go through and you want to mark any unusual wears you might see that might need to be addressed. You're going to be then taking a scraper and you're going to be going after all the old fabric and foam that's inside the canopy. And again, it's going to be quite a mess. But during the examination of looking for wears, you want to kind of see, why did it wear? Did the old glass have some missing felt there, or was there something else? You're going to be scraping off the foam if required. You're going to clean it all down. Eventually, when you get it clean enough, you can see markings that were on the canopy before the window and all, before the foam and the fabric was all applied to it. And then you're going to finally clean it with solvent. Once you have it down to where it's good and mechanically clean, then you can reposition the canopy yet again back onto what I like to call on its back, like a turtle with its legs up in the air, and you can begin masking the area for the new application. So you're going to be cutting new wool from fabric patterns that you made from the old pieces. Again, this is where the measurements come in really handy. And you're going to do a trial first fit of the center plastic in the console. With all of that done, you're going to be pretty much wrapping up day 2. And at the end of day 2, you're going to be ready to start doing a lot more trimming and fitting of the plastic on day 3. But we'll get to that in just a moment. So stay tuned, my friends. Now on day 3, all the plastic pieces have had their first trial fit and hold, each piece. But you also have to check where the pieces meet together, where there might be an overlap, how the holes are going to line up, and how it's going to be into final trim. And then when you get a first check fit of all the pieces, you can begin cutting the holes in the side where the canopy stop bumpers can go in, and that will pretty much wrap up a day's worth of work of getting everything ready for that first fit. And that will pretty much, again, wrap up day 3. And again, some of the tools we mentioned, like the spring clamps, all come in very handy. And as you can see here, it's again on its back on the floor on a good pad. And we'll be coming up with a summary of the day 3 work. By the way, an electric drill comes in handy too. Let me throw that in here. Now, day 4, we shot video at the hangar that particular day. This is July 3rd, right before the 4th of July. And as you can see, there's a lot of trim and fit and drill, trim and fit and check. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to go find a good audio track for the background of this and let you watch it. But again, that's what day 4 was, all fit and trim. You know, you want to get it to the point so that tomorrow, the next day, you can do a final trip with all the hardware in place, check with screws in place, and at that point you're ready for the new glass. And once you're at that point, all the plastic comes back out and it goes and gets cleaned, and it gets primed, it gets painted, and then it gets painted with a clear semi-gloss, so protected from UV if it's ever parked outside. So that's going to be wrapping up the videos, and I'm going to go find that soundtrack for you right now. So day 5 again is a lot of fit and trim, so that finally the plastic will be ready to go off and be cleaned, primed, and painted for the final install on day 6 when it all goes back together, and that'll be done. So we'll see you in just a few minutes on day 6. Now, day 6 is the fun day. That's when the new glass goes in. For that, you're going to need the foam tape from Plain Plastics. You're going to cut it in half and put it on each end and around and wrap each of the canopy windows where they slide in. That's also going to get a little silicone to help it slide into those canopy tracks. But that's the tape that you're going to be using. And again, all that's going to be listed here in the video. We're going to put some music in the background. You'll be able to see the different plastics and their labels as they come up. We also mark the location for where all the clips go, so we make sure everything goes back evenly spaced and looks a lot like the factory. So stay tuned for some of the details. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you change out the glass and the plastic in your canopy. Letting we put in some new flint colored wool fabric and getting everything all ready to go. Now it's ready to go back on the airplane and have the canopy seals installed. So we hope you found all these details useful and informative. Hope you're motivated. Have a great day flying your Grumman. Thanks for watching. And we thought we'd share our little MGM lion with you. Perfect. So we hope you enjoyed all of this. Thanks for watching.